Hello, this is Gareth from the iMoot team. It is my great pleasure to introduce Tim Hunt, who's going to talk about, or even do, fixing a Moodle bug. Tim does a quiz model, works at the Open University, has spent a year working at Moodle HQ, is an all-round famous, awesome dude. Thank you, Tim, for your time and for this presentation and for really having a go at this. Thank you.
Thank you, Gareth. So the idea for this presentation came up last year in the middle of the Moot. Someone complained that there weren't really any sessions for developers. And so at the last minute, I volunteered to try and do a session where I demonstrated how you get code into Moodle Core. And last year it seemed to work, though I had the excuse that it was all put together at the last minute. This year I don't really have that excuse because I proposed this session through the normal channels, but I have to say it's still pretty much unprepared and thrown together at the last minute. Still, and yes, this year at the iMoot there have been several more good developer sessions. I've seen some of them and the others look good, but I couldn't make it at that time. So the basic idea is to show you the process by which code gets submitted to Moodle, the various reviews it goes through, and to do that actually by doing it and talking about what I'm doing as I go along. So we've got this diagram that explains what the process is. This is the Moodle developer documentation, docs.moodle.org/dev. We've got this terribly complicated diagram, and I'm not sure if it helps very much. There we go. We're really going to be today concerned with the top part, which is sort of, as a developer, working on a bit of code and going through the initial review and right, so there are two, but basically there are three steps to this, maybe. Someone discovers the bug or has a reason to change the code and they write some code, they make a change to Moodle and think they want it to go into Moodle Core. So sort of step one is whatever leads up to the code being written. Step two is what's called peer review and is this bit in the middle. And this is where you get any other developer to review the change you have made. And later I'll probably ask Gareth to do this for me. And they look at the code for the first time and point out anything they can see is wrong. And when they're, if they may send it back and say, go and change this, or they may say, that's good enough, that can now go for final review. And, so once you've had peer review and the peer reviewer is happy, you submit it for integration review, as we call it. And this is the sort of formal final process that happens on a weekly cycle. So on Monday morning in Perth time, all the issues that are waiting to be that have got through peer review and are waiting. Let's go and have a look at that. So this is where the process is managed, the Moodle Bug Tracker. And what we see on the left here is all the bugs that were fixed last week. When I started this morning session, it said there were 11 issues waiting for integration review, and then we added one more, so now it says 12 issues waiting for integration review. So in a couple of hours' time, when Perth wakes up, all the issues we hope, soon to be 13, all the issues waiting here get moved into the sort of central section of this page, which is kind of this week. And I don't quite understand why there's one issue in there already. That's still not what normally happens, but they must have handled one out of order. So Monday morning, everything goes into the middle, and this is a sort of pie chart that normally starts with everything, waiting for integration review. Let's go back to the process. There's an integration review team of, I think it's 4 or 5 of the most senior and experienced Moodle developers, people like Dan Patowski, Eloy Lafuente, Andrew Nichols, Rajesh, or Ankit. I'm forgetting their names. They'll be credited somewhere on the Moodle site. They pick one issue at a time. They also review the code. They run any tests, and if they find a problem, they send it back up to the top to be reworked. If everything's okay, it goes down to ready for testing. So then on Wednesday, hopefully everything's been reviewed a final time and is ready to be tested. And then all the staff at Moodle HQ have to test the issues and make sure the fix really works. And so by the end of Wednesday, with any luck, sometimes it's Thursday or even Friday, everything's marked as sort of tested complete, and then they put out the weekly release. So there's a new update of Moodle every week. And once every couple of months, they take one of those weekly releases and call it the next major release, like sort of Moodle 2.7.6 or whatever. So that's the basic process, but today we're mainly going to be bit up at the top where we've got a bug report and we want to try and write the code, and then we want Gareth to peer review it so we can submit it for integration, and then next week we can all watch and see what happens as it goes through final review. So what bug are we going to fix? Well, obviously for this session I tried to find something quite easy, and this one you can see from the number. If you look, sort of bugs filed today are up to about 50,000. This bug is kind of 29,000, so it's actually several years old. Yes, created in 2011, and it's been sitting around on something I'd like to work on, and I've never quite got around to it. But I think it's easy enough that we can fix it now. Now, before you start changing the code, the first thing is actually to make sure you understand what the problem is and what needs to be changed. And so for doing development, I have a copy of Moodle set up on this laptop, which is just kind of on this laptop. It's a place I can do development and test things out in relative safety. Because it's just on this laptop, it has a really insecure password. And so this is my main test course, and it's just full of complete junk from testing lots of different bugs. So the thing we're concerned about today, let me turn editing on. It's to do with the interactive question behavior. So, the other thing to say about this test site is I've got all the developer options turned on, and that makes it run really slowly. Add a quiz. So there are various options. There's one called Developer Debug, makes Moodle just detailed error messages. That's really helpful if you're developing because it gives you useful clues if you do something wrong. There's Theme Designer mode, that means you can edit the CSS files and immediately see what's changed, but that makes everything a lot slower. And similarly, there's an option for whether to cache JavaScript, and that's turned off, which makes things slower, but again, it means you can edit the JavaScript files and the changes appear immediately. So anyway, the bug we're looking at is related to the question, how questions behave interactive with multiple tries, so we better set that. And need to add a question to this quiz. you haven't seen it, this is since Moodle 2.8, the page where you build quizzes has got a bit nicer. So I hope you agree it's a bit nicer than it was. What we need here, use a question I made before. And that's not actually going to work. I put in some things. So I think that's now set up the way we need. Let's preview it, and I can show you what the problem is. So the point about the interactive with multiple tries behavior is that the students can have several goes at getting the question right. So you might say, I don't know, it's the internet, it's bound to be a cat. Check that. And we got it wrong, so we see the first hint I put into the question. Obviously, this is really top quality pedagogy going on here. And we get the answer, say, try again. Now you see we've only got 2 tries remaining, but we get another go. Perhaps it's a dog. But no, we got it wrong again. And you'll see now it's saying not complete, and that's not very helpful. It might be more useful if it actually told you how many tries you had left. That's what the bug, or it's actually more of an improvement. Now, all my test questions, my colleague Sam Marshall is to blame for this, but all my test questions, the right answer is frog. So there we go. So we got it right on the 3rd try, so we only get a 1/3 of the marks, and we finally got it right. But if we start this again, the point is, when we're in this state where it's giving us the feedback, then rather than it just says not complete, which is not helpful. At this point, I think it would be good if it said tries remaining 2, like in the other state. So that's what this feature request is about. Actually, it requested 2 things, one of which I disagree with. The bit about displaying the marks, we definitely don't want, and I checked with one of my colleagues at the OU, and we agree we don't want this. But the bit about saying number of tries left, we think is a good idea. Joseph was a long-time Moodler who sadly, he was a teacher in France, and sadly he's now retired, which is a pity because he gave a lot to the community. But still, we should. One of the things he gave to this community was this suggestion, and it's a good suggestion, so let's do it. So now we need to look at the code. And so this is my code editor. It's called Eclipse. Developers can have huge arguments about what the right editor to use is. I use this editor, and it works for me. Now, to understand what what to change to get what code to change to get the change in the Moodle interface you want is you have to know your way around the code, basically. And the Moodle code is fairly well organized. I think some of the other sessions for developers have talked about how Moodle is how to develop Moodle plugins, and there are some common sorts of plugins. Block plugins all live in the folder called blocks, and things like the HTML block, the random glossary entry block, maybe a navigation block here somewhere. There we go. Yes. So you can see that's all quite logical and inside of. So basically, what is a Moodle plugin? In one sense, it's a file of, it's a bunch of folder. It's a folder of things on disk with a bunch of files in there, and they follow a fairly standard structure. What else? There's like activity modules, things like the quiz, assignment, forum, so on. So again, it's all a very similar structure. Though obviously the quiz is much more complicated, so there's a lot of files inside quiz, but it's still basically the same. And then also you've got some sort of core parts of the system. A lot of the really core code is in the lib folder. Things like the messaging systems in a folder of its own. Things about groups live in there, unsurprisingly. So as long as you speak English, then really it makes quite a lot of sense. You can mostly know where to find things, though obviously it gets easier with more experience. And what we're interested in really is questions. Well, you might think it was in the quiz, but actually it's the place I've obviously been working on quiz and question code for a long time, so I know exactly where to look, pretty much. So we need to be in questions, and it's to do with question behaviors, and these are more plugins, and it's really the interactive behavior we're interested in. So this is what Moodle looks like under the hood, PHP code. A whole lot of functions. The colors don't really matter. I mean, computer code is just plain text, but almost all developers' editors color code it automatically for you to make it just easier to read. So things like the comments here, the comment has no effect on how it works, but they sort of explain what's going on for the benefit of any humans visiting, and functions and things. These are language keywords, so on. Now, I'm not going to try and explain in detail exactly how all the question system fits together. I'm just going to try and get us to the right place. And the right place is here. So computer code tends to be broken down into small little bits that each do one particular thing well. So that's the idea. So if we go back and look at the page, you'll see that the display of the question is made up of lots of little bits. I mean, there's the bit that says the mark, the bit that says the question number, and the bit that sort of tells you what state the question is in now. And as I say, from my previous experience, I happen to know that this bit of text is coming from this function. This function exists to generate that bit of text that tells us tells the user what state the question is in right now. And this is some slightly complicated logic, but we can sort of see here that this must be the bit we're looking for, because if the question is in the try again state when it's showing the hint, at the moment we say not complete. And then in the other state we try and show the number of tries remaining. And really what we'd like to do is show the number of tries remaining in all cases. I wonder if it's as simple as just getting rid of the if statement and always showing the number of tries remaining. I wonder if that works. There are two schools of thought here. One, perhaps you should logically analyze what the right thing to do. Sometimes though you can just sort of guess and see if it works. Oh, that seems to work. That's now saying tries remaining 2. So if we try again, speaking of other developers who've had a big formative impression on me, for many years there was a great Moodle developer called Penny Leach, who sadly left the community, gosh, years ago now. Sam was frog obsessed, Penny was pony obsessed, and I've also picked up that habit from her. Tries remaining 1. Right, this does seem to be doing what we want. So that looks promising. That is, we think, the change we want in the code. Just take out that if statement. So now we've got that change, we need to sort of prepare that change into a form where it can be reviewed by other people. And to do this, we use the code management system that Moodle uses, which is called Git. So we can see we're on a branch. So different. Thank you, Gareth. That's a good question. I'll come back to that. Now, because I was fixing a bug earlier, I know my Moodle site is up to date. What we need to do, though, is we need I don't know. Most of the audience said they were sort of administrators or similar, so you may not actually know much about Git, though some people use Git to administer their Moodle site. It would be helpful to know what level of Git, do you know anything about Git, basically? If you do, or if you don't, please let me know in the chat. So let me try and briefly, I think I can explain it this way. Now, the text here may just be too small and tiny for you to see, but what Git does is it tracks every single version of Moodle ever. I mean, if we scrolled this down, you would get back to like the year 2001 or something. Yeah, there we go. November 2001, Martin Degamas sort of says initial revision of Moodle with some fairly familiar files like that you would still see in Moodle today. And over the years, there's been, I think, hundreds of thousands of different versions of Moodle, and Git tracks every single change because it doesn't just, this is the current weekly release of Moodle 3.0 dev. You've got all the code there, and it also shows you what changed in this version compared to the previous version. And this particular change just changed 2 lines in this file, 2 version numbers. And the different versions get sort of marked with sort of significant numbers. So, for example, master is the kind of current version. The bug I fixed earlier was bug 50341, and we can sort of see in Git here. I sort of tagged that version with the bug name so we could find it. And what I changed was a little bit of this function, and I made a comment that explained what I'd changed and why. And we are about to change some other files. And so to change the other files, I've created this branch called after the bug we're working on now, but at the moment it's exactly the same as the master branch, which we haven't made any changes. that's basically what Git does. It tracks all these versions and lets you create new versions, and that the various commands are just letting us, do that. I'll keep that window. We might look back at it later. Unfortunately, a bit buggy on my computer and generates all these error messages, which is so. Now on a branch named after the bug, that's the sort of convention people use. So it's, you have all these different versions floating around, and it's useful to know that the changes we're working on now relate to this bug in the Moodle tracker. But if we look, we can see that I've modified that file, and if you want to see exactly what I've modified, I can say git diff, show me this file. I've sort of deleted that bit, and now we've just got that. Now, Gareth asked a good question, which is that not complete string used anywhere else? Because if it's not used, we should get rid of it. Back to the code. One very useful technique you find yourself doing a lot in Moodle development, and this is you just search to see. So I was wondering if not complete is used anywhere. This is how Moodle's translation system works. We've got this function called getString, which goes and gets that bit of text in the current language. So we've got words not complete, they're used there. Interestingly, right, we'll need to deal with that in a minute. They are also used in the tests, but the tests will now fail. We'll come back to the tests in a minute. So this string is not used anywhere, so we should get rid of it because it makes translators' lives a bit easier. So that's that. So that looks like the change we need, except that I just saw that the string was used in the unit tests. So unit tests are a way to automatically test Moodle. And we run them like this. And it's not terribly exciting unless anything goes wrong, because it just prints out a lot of dots if it runs at all. What it may actually do is tell me that my development site is not up to date. Yes, so it's telling me that things are not in a good state, so I need to redo the initialization. So they've got the test system in Moodle very nicely set up. It kind of knows what's going on, and it sort of makes sure that you have a Moodle site ready for testing. And if it's not ready, it kind of reinstalls itself. So we need to wait while that reinstalls itself. While we're waiting for that, let's go and have a look at the tests. So these are some tests that we have for a lot of the question system. And they're not really unit tests, actually, strictly speaking. But what this test is doing, it makes, in this case, a multiple choice question, and it starts an attempt, and it says sort of checks what's displayed, and it says suppose the student gives that answer, and then it checks what feedback is displayed and so on, and then it looks at a different answer and checks what's displayed. Here is where this is going to fail because it's still checking that the thing works the way it used to work, and we've changed that, so we'll need to update this. But let's first run the tests and verify that they fail. Finished. this will now run. Don't do anything because I've given the wrong plugin name. Right, and things are failing as I sort of predicted. Scroll back up, and you can see that, right, it's actually failing because it's trying to refer to a string that no longer exists because we deleted it. So that's no good. So what we're going to have to do is change this bit. One, I think. Two. Same. Excuse me. Let's do so with a bit of luck, that has fixed those tests. Yeah, so that's what you see when everything's working. You just get a lot of dots, and it says OK. No passes. I'm a little bit worried that the string might be referred to in other places. Let's do more of a search. That's irritating. The adapted behavior refers to it. Yes, you see. I should type that more. So that's the unit tests. Verify they're still. Those also work. So, I mean, this is not a typical example. Normally, the unit tests are good because you don't expect to change how important bits of Moodle functionality behave. So, and the tests will catch if you have changed something. In this case, we did want to change how Moodle works, so we have to change some of the tests to allow for that, which is a bit more work, but is still very worthwhile. So I think that now is all the changes we need. now we've got the changes we want, and we want to prepare them ready to share with the world. So we make what's called a Git Commit. So when you make a change to Moodle, you have to say what the change is and why. It's good if you ever need to look back. And there's a convention for how you do it. Again, you use the bug number, and you first have to say where in Moodle it is. Thanks, Gareth. So we can see there the summary of the changes we want to make. It's got this strange unique number to identify it. We've got the comment I typed, and we can see the changes made in the code. And to make them publicly available, we need to put them on a site called GitHub. So having done that, if we go back to the browser, so this is a copy of all the changes I have in Git that's publicly browsable on a website, which is good because from here we can make it available for people to review, which we'll do. And again, here is exactly the same change I made that we saw before in my terminal. Here we are seeing it on the web. Here we go. We'll leave that change URL in a minute. So now we go back to the Moodle Bug Tracker and do the bit about requesting peer review. So I think Gareth will review this for me. Go. And the other thing you're expected to do when you submit a change to Moodle is explain how to test it. So question bank question. Oh, I think that's all someone needs to do to check this. Might add a note. This is also tested. tells the person doing the testing by hand that they don't have to worry so much for something else. And now we probably add a comment to explain what's going on, like saying, so, and we click the request peer review button. Now, I'm hoping that in a minute Gareth will go in and review this for me, but we'll just wait a moment because something else happens and we've got some automated. So over the last few years, they've done various automated tests of Moodle code quality. And I'm just going to go and so we've got this plugin called Code Checker, which you can get from the plugins database. And what that does is it analyzes your code against, where's back to the course? Like many open source projects, Moodle has very strict standards for exactly how the code should be set out. You know, exactly how to lay out an if statement or other things. And for a very big comment that's project that's worked on by a lot of people, it's quite important that we keep the code as clean as possible. Because with many people working on the code, and I think nearly 150 different people submitted a change for Moodle 2.9 compared to 2.8. You know, lots of people work on it, so we need really strict standards to stop things becoming a terrible mess. And to help with the standards, we got this plugin called Code Checker that automatically checks things. And they've now hooked it up so that when you submit a change for review, it automatically checks it and points out a lot of problems. So here we've got some coding style problems. You see, it's indented wrong. We've got some missing documentation on some functions. It's telling us that so we can fix it. And also, I said the thing about the commit message, you have to start with the bug number, and we've got that wrong. So it's pointing out all these, they're all really trivial things, but they need to be right, and the computer can test it. So when Gareth comes to do a human peer review, he doesn't have to waste his time on these trivial things. I can have got those right first. Gareth says there's something here to look at. Yes, so when the automatic checks run, it adds a little CI tag, and we can see down here, it's telling me I got it right. Yay! So that is the automated checks have run. So now Gareth can go ahead and do a human peer review. Now, Gareth made the point, we have these labels to document what's going on, and this is indeed a change to the user interface. So we tag those user interface change so that Mary Cooch or someone can come along later and check to see if the documentation needs to be changed. I'm pretty sure the detail like this isn't documented in detail. So when I say Gareth is going to peer review this, there's some documentation about that. Peer review checklist. There's some blurb about what the process is, but down here, it's basically all the things that you should think about when you're peer reviewing someone else's code. So some of these things like syntax and white space, you hope the automated checks have done, but they might have missed it. Then we get into the more meaningful things like all the things where it accesses the database. This can be quite critical for Moodle performance, and also Moodle has to work on 4 different types of database, so there are things to check there. The output, things like the fact that where I was displaying some text, it was using Moodle's translation system so it will work in every language. And each of these things you must check. There's slightly in more detail the kind of things you should be looking for as a peer reviewer. Right, so Gareth says he's done the peer review. Let's see what he says. So what Gareth has done is ticked off the relevant ones with a Y, and the things that are not relevant here, like there's nothing involving the database, he's marked with a dash. So that looks good. So this looks like it's ready. Now, the bug I fixed before was a bug, and therefore it had to be fixed in all the supported versions. This change is more of an improvement, so it should only go into Moodle 3, so we only need a master branch. So I think we're basically done. So this will go into Moodle 3, it's all ready to go. So now if we go back to that integration dashboard and reload the page, we should now see there are 13 issues waiting for integration. I don't know if you're familiar with the Moodle Bug Tracker, but if you're logged into the tracker down here, you can choose to start watching the issue, and then you'll get emails every time it changes. And if you're interested to see how this comes out next week when it goes through integration review, you could watch the issue. I don't need to be a watcher because it's assigned to me. I'll get the emails about it automatically. So that's basically the process. You well, start with, you kind of think about it. You have to work out what you want to change and why. But ultimately, you end up with a patch, some changes in the code. So then you put the patch somewhere public where it can be reviewed, and I put it on GitHub. You update the issue to request peer review with the information about what it is and the testing instructions. Someone comes along and peer reviews it, and if everything's good, you also get the automated checks. Then you can submit it for integration, and in the next week it gets reviewed. That's basically how it works. And normally it's about 30 or 40 changes a week that go in. Just have a look at the forums on Moodle.org. There's one down at the bottom, integration exposed, where every week the integration team sort of posts a summary of what's changed. And recently not much has been changing because we've just released Moodle 2.9, so they have been just putting in small bug fixes. If you go back a bit to before Moodle 2.9 was released, there were many more issues coming through each week, sort of 40 or 50 or so on. So if you're interested in Moodle development, it's good to subscribe to this Integration Exposed forum. I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to say. So I'm happy to answer questions now.
Hi, it's Gareth from the Army team. Just while you're maybe thinking of some questions, thank you very much, Tim, for presenting, going through that one. It actually seems a very stressful thing to do something really live, and I hope people have got a really good lot out of it, of what goes on, and please do ask questions. So once again, Tim, thank you very much for your time and for doing this.
I have to say, I think the earlier session I explained the bug fixing a bit better, but in the earlier expression I didn't talk about unit testing at all. So the thing you got this time round was the bit about the unit tests. I'm not sure how well I explained that either, but again, if you look in the course, I have linked to pages about, there are two sorts of automated tests, PHP unit and Bahat, and so I've linked to the documentation about that. The other thing to say is quite a lot of what I've said I've written up on my blog, and again, if you really want to understand this, reading my blog post at your own pace might be a good thing. Yes, it's also true that the Moodle code is very big and complicated, and while it's quite logical and makes sense once you know your way around, it does take a lot to learn your way around. But there have been some good talks here in this iMoot about getting started with development. Richard Pilbury gave a good talk, which I saw, and who was it gave the talk about developing plugins? I haven't had time to watch that yet. I couldn't see it live, but I need to watch the recording of that to see how he explained it. Yeah, Justin Hunt, thank you. Yes. The nice thing about Moodle is there's lots of examples of how you do different things, and the way to start is to find something that's close to what you want and adjust it.